Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to tonight's race preview for, of course, tomorrow's 2021 Portuguese Grand Prix after the qualifying session that, of course, finished a few hours ago at the Portimao circuit in the Algarve. And yeah, qualifying, I mean, there is a lot of points of interest, but it wasn't quite, especially the end of qualifying, it wasn't quite as exciting and dramatic as it probably could have been. And I'm just hoping that that excitement and drama can really come in the race tomorrow. But yeah, we got a result that definitely still of interest. I mean, the top four on the grid, as you can see on the left-hand side, looks a bit same old from last season, to be honest. But the rest of the field, it's very much up for grabs in terms of who finishes where. And we'll get into tonight this race preview and just talk about, you know, who's likely to do what, who's likely to finish where. Hopefully you guys are doing well on this, what is a Saturday night for me here in the UK. And hopefully, yeah, with me, you'll, preview the race, put your comments in the chat, and let me know what you think will happen in tomorrow's race, and also give us, some final thoughts on the qualifying session that happened earlier. Now, before we get into the teams and getting into how they did and how I think they'll most likely get on tomorrow, let's first get into the official qualifying results. So, of course, Valtteri Bottas on pole position by, like I said earlier, by James Bond of a second. Lewis Hamilton second, Max Verstappen third, Sergio Perez fourth, Carlos Sainz fifth, and then Ocon, Norris, Leclerc, Gasly, and Vettel completing the top 10. Knocked out in Q2 was George Russell, Antonio Giovinazzi, Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda, and Kimi Raikkonen. And they knocked out in Q1, surprisingly, Daniel Ricciardo, Lance Stroll, and then Nicholas Latifi, Mick Schumacher, and Nikita Mazepin. So that is your order from qualifying earlier on. And let's just get straight into it and start off with Mercedes, who I think you have to say, and Red Bull definitely could have got pole with Max Verstappen, and we'll get into that in a moment. But this was the first session, I'd say, of the season so far. The first meaningful session of the season so far where it looked like the old Mercedes from 2020. Obviously getting a 1-2. They were also very, very good in Q2 where Hamilton was on pole. Well, not on pole, but, was leading that session by half a second, and Bottas was second. And the Red Bull seemingly nowhere at that point. But definitely the speed of the Mercedes this weekend has been a lot stronger than I think maybe even they expected, and certainly we expected. I mean, they have probably gained a tenth or two compared to, again, what we thought they were going to do. But I think Mercedes, even though Max Verstappen is third and Max Verstappen still has a great chance of winning the race because, I mean, it's Max Verstappen and he does still have a car good enough for the victory. This weekend really so far has seemed very ominous at times, I think is the right word, from Mercedes, because both drivers through all the sessions, including, the whole of qualifying, have looked very strong. The car looks a lot more stable and drivable than it was at the first couple of Grand Prix, and it just, again, looks a lot more like the old 2020 Mercedes team and Mercedes car and Mercedes drivers. So, great day, great session. And as we'll get into in a moment, with the sector times, Mercedes, you can definitely see the gains that have been made by them in the couple weeks we've had since Imola, which is has similar parts of the circuit compared to Portimao, but Portimao is probably a bit more aerodynamic centered than Imola is. Imola's a bit faster of a racetrack and does reward a bit more of a slippery car than this circuit does, but yeah, Mercedes looking great. And I have to say, and we'll get into, of course, Red Bull in a moment, but I think in terms of looking forward to the race tomorrow, and I think you can really, the evidence is there for the first two races, but I think really this season what we have is Red Bull have definitely a quicker car in qualifying from what we've seen so far this season than they do in the race. I mean, the car in the race is still very quick, but I think without doubt, Mercedes' race pace is a lot stronger than it is than their qualifying pace is, which is what makes tomorrow ominous because, front row lockout, it's still going to be very hard for Verstappen to beat them both. he can do it, Verstappen, but again, looking ominous. And Mercedes, if you look at the last 2 races, their race pace has been at least on par with what Red Bull have been doing, if not quicker. I mean, look at, Imola, where Hamilton, for plenty of parts of that race, despite having damage, is quicker than Verstappen. So you'd have to say Mercedes favourites for tomorrow. Most likely Lewis Hamilton for the race win, because I think Hamilton, if Mercedes had gone for soft tyres for their final run with both drivers, Bottas probably would have improved, but I think Hamilton would have got enough pace in hand to get ahead of Bottas and get the pole position. And he'll definitely be disappointed by that, because of course he's now on the dirty side of the grid. Verstappen, his rival, is on the clean side of the grid, so Verstappen will have an advantage there going down to turn 1. And I believe if second place is on the right-hand side of the grid, Max will have the outside line, which I'd say is probably the more favourable line going into turn 1. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll get the position, because you can go side by side at this circuit for probably the first 4 or 5 corners. So doesn't necessarily mean Lewis Hamilton is definitely going to lose position to Verstappen, but he definitely would have been disappointed not to get pole, because with Mercedes looking so good, he really did need to just put as much pressure on Verstappen as possible, but also because of Verstappen really bottling pole position, he should have really caused as much damage to Verstappen's hopes for the weekend in terms of winning the race as he could. But just sadly for him and his fans, I'm just coughing there, he couldn't do so. But yeah, I think Mercedes are definite favourites for tomorrow. But this man on screen and this team, you can't count them out. And the reasons you can't count them out is because, again, Verstappen on the clean side of the grid, and that will definitely be a big benefit to him and Red Bull. But also, if you remember back to last year's race, the slipstream effect and the DRS was very, very powerful. And because Red Bull have probably one of the quickest cars in a straight line, which is mad to say after the last few years and what they've had. But yeah, with the straight line speed the Honda has, if Max can get within a second of a Mercedes, again, with the DRS and slipstream effect that, if that plays out tomorrow to be as big of an effect as it was last year, then Max Verstappen should, even if he's third at the end of the first lap, he should at least be trying to overtake the Mercedes cars, because again, the run he'll get on them down to turn 1 and maybe even down to turn 5, where there's a second DRS zone for this Grand Prix this year, you can't count him out for those reasons. And he is Max Verstappen. That's another reason you just cannot count him out. But I have to say, for qualifying today, definitely bottled it. His first lap in Q3, the first representative lap, was and would have been ultimately good enough for pole position. But he, whilst making a bit of a mistake through the mid part of turn 4, got a bit of oversteer, was lucky because of the wind speed, which was about 20 kilometers an hour at the time at the track. Was lucky not to spin it like his teammate Perez did in Q1. So yeah, very lucky about that. But with that mistake, track extended and got his time deleted. Such a shame, because he had the pace. He absolutely had the pace for pole position. But when it mattered most, not just the first run in Q3, but the last run as well, it just didn't produce a lap that was, remotely going to be good enough and law-abiding to get pole position. And it's a shame, but that's the way it is. So that's, 2 races in a row, sadly, where he's thrown away really what should have been his, which was pole position. Now, Imola, he got a great start, controlled the race, handled the pressure of Hamilton behind him well. Will lightning strike twice this weekend? Probably not. The worst case scenario for him at the start tomorrow is if Hamilton gets into the lead and Bottas is second, because Verstappen will be held up quite a bit, most likely behind Valtteri Bottas. That's if Red Bull do have a car that is quick enough to at least get within a second of the Finn. But giving himself, again, I think I said this after qualifying at Imola, he's given himself quite a mountain to climb to get the race win. And he, climbed that mountain 2 weeks ago, but you can't climb it successfully and perfectly every time. So I'm tending to lean at the moment towards a Mercedes win, and also because Mercedes so far this season have shown, I think, that they have the better race car than Red Bull do. Red Bull do tend to be at their absolute strongest in qualifying. Still be very strong, of course, in the race, but they don't have, I think, as much. Well, this weekend they definitely don't have as much grip as the Mercedes, but the car just isn't as well set up for a race, situation as the Mercedes car is. So if he doesn't win the race, which I don't think he will, I think the best he can do really is second, then he's got to look at qualifying, I'm afraid, for a mistake that he didn't need to make. Because, first lap in Q3, he could have used it, really. Of course he was going to push, but he could have used it as a banker for his last run, and at least he wouldn't have had that pressure of, I've got to get this lap right and make sure it's not, over the track limits, or else I'm going to end up starting P10. He just gave himself too much to do. So, obviously not good for Verstappen. Perez in fourth. I think that's the best Perez could do. Perez's actual pace in qualifying, I thought, was the best it could be. I really thought that. He was only, 2.5 tenths off Max Verstappen. So, can't ask for more. And yeah, Red Bull, if they're going to win the race tomorrow, it's going to be some job for them to get it done, because Mercedes look, at this point of the season, compared to the races before, this is the strongest. Without doubt, Mercedes have looked in every area with their car and their team and their drivers so far this season. So yeah, not looking great for Red Bull. Hopefully, though, we can still get a great fight in the race, and hopefully Valtteri Bottas will play an exciting role in what happens between those two. But now let's just quickly get into the top two teams in the midfield before we get into the data. So McLaren, Lando Norris P7, that's, maybe he could have got 6th place, but really that position of the grid, considering McLaren's pace this weekend, especially over a single lap, that's the best he could have done. Can't really ask for more. He was never going to be in the top 4 or 5 on the grid. To be honest, did really well to outqualify Charles Leclerc, when Ferrari, at least in qualifying trim, look as though they have quite a bit quicker of a car. So yeah, I think Lando Norris did great. Another great qualifying performance, and in the race tomorrow, I could see him easily getting in the top 6, which would be a great result for McLaren, considering this is not really a McLaren track. You probably have to wait 3 or 4 races for that. But yeah, I think good performance by him. But Daniel Ricciardo down in 16th place, knocked down Q1. Wow. How poor was that? And you have to say, it was a poor job by Daniel Ricciardo. He ultimately did not have the pace. He did make a mistake, I think, the penultimate, or the third to last corner, where he had quite a bit of understeer, but he just simply didn't have the pace. He was a second slower than Norris in Q1. Yes, he's getting used to the team and, the car and that, but, being that far off, that's way too much. Way too much. So, yeah, very poor there by Ricciardo. I still think in the race tomorrow, I could easily see him still scoring a couple points, because the McLaren in a straight line is really strong. And like I've said before a million times, the McLaren race pace is also very strong. And, the Alfa Romeo's ahead of him, the Williams, Alonso, those are cars, I wouldn't say drivers, but those are cars that can definitely be overtaken by Daniel Ricciardo, considering the package that Daniel Ricciardo has. So poor for him, but he shouldn't lose hope, because I still think a points finish is very much possible. But Lando Norris, great job, another great performance as he continues his flying start to the season. Now, Ferrari. This man on screen, what a drive. 5th place in qualifying for Carlos Sainz. Couldn't have asked for any more. That was the best he was going to do. The Mercedes and Red Bulls are just too quick. He wasn't actually, considering how bad Ferrari were last season, Ferrari weren't actually that slow compared to the front runners. So I think, great job by Ferrari as well. But Carlos Sainz, great, finally getting the lap nailed in qualifying, which is all he needed to do, really, to set himself up for a really, really good race result. I mean, at Imola, finishing 5th place, but gave himself quite a lot of hard work to do, coming from 11th on the grid and visiting the gravel trap twice in that Grand Prix. He does, though, start on the soft compound tyres. So compared to his teammate Charles Leclerc, it's still going to be tough for him to beat him. He definitely can still beat him. He's got a very good chance of doing that. The only thing, if he does beat Leclerc, what it'll depend on is if Leclerc, because he's starting on that harder compound Leclerc, and tyre warm-up, as we've seen this weekend, has been very, I won't say very poor, but troubling a lot of the drivers out there and teams. Because Leclerc's on that harder compound to start the race compared to Sainz, Ocon, Norris, Gasly and Vettel. If Leclerc does lose positions at the start, or even, is in 8th place and is struggling to make his way through the field, because let's remember the Ferrari in a straight line is still not that quick. So they're not exactly going to be one of those cars that, does a lot of overtaking. He could still beat Leclerc because Leclerc, if he gets held up in traffic a lot, that could really help Carlos Sainz, give him a buffer to, say, his teammate. With Leclerc, I think Leclerc really up until Q3 did a very good job. Just in Q3, just simply didn't get a lap together that was good enough, and he'll be very disappointed with that, because if he was in P5 on the medium compound tyre with his teammate next to him, Ferrari would be, rubbing their hands, maybe not in delight, but at what would surely be a strong points finish compared to, McLaren and AlphaTauri and the other midfield teams. So, yeah, I think Ferrari, overall good day. Definitely watch out for Charles Leclerc from, say, lap 20 to lap 50. I think definitely that's where Leclerc will do his damage in the race on the medium compound tyre. So look out for him, because he might be able to still get up there in 5th place or even a higher position if something happens to one of the top 4. So yeah, definitely watch out for Charles Leclerc. But yeah, good day I'd have to say for Ferrari. And I think now we'll get into the sector times and look at how certain cars did in certain parts of the track, which of course required very different things. So here are the sector times. So in the first sector, Mercedes are ahead of the next car by what? Almost a tenth of a second. In the first sector, the Mercedes was very quick. Verstappen also did a decent first sector, and Lando Norris up there as well. I think we can definitely say that the Mercedes and Honda powered teams still looking in the power sectors or power parts of the track, still looking very strong compared to Ferrari and Renault powered cars. But really, the sector of the circuit that matters the most, in my opinion, is Sector 2 and the first half of Sector 3. So if you look at Sector 2, and I'll try if I can and zoom in a bit on the sector times here so you can see it better. But if you look at the middle sector, you can see Mercedes quite clearly ahead of everyone else. They're ahead by a tenth to a tenth and a half ahead of the next car, which in half a minute of a sector is quite a lot. So you can see, aerodynamically speaking, Mercedes have made a clear gain, because at Imola, if you remember, Red Bull were 1 and 2 in the middle sector there, where aerodynamics were at their most important. So Mercedes have made a clear gain on that, on that part of their car, which is worrying for Red Bull. The Max Verstappen up there, Norris up there nicely as well. I have to say, though, I don't think that necessarily Max Verstappen's Sector 2 time is representative of the gap between Mercedes and Red Bull, because Max Verstappen always does get a bit more out of that Red Bull car than most normal human beings can find. And, Sergio Perez there, you can see, 3 tenths off in the middle sector alone. I'm not saying that the gap is exactly that, 3 tenths between the two, but, it's at least a couple tenths of a second Mercedes have there in the middle sector over Red Bull. And tomorrow that will play a massive role in, looking after tyres and pulling away in that middle sector and giving them a nice buffer to the rest. And avoiding DRS or Verstappen rather getting DRS off of the Mercedes cars. Yeah, Mercedes, aerodynamically speaking, clearly ahead of Red Bull by, again, about 2 tenths of a second, I would say. And then in Sector 3, interestingly, you can see Alpine are just as quick, really, as Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, and Bottas. Which I don't think that's power in that final long right-hander where they're full throttle. I don't think that's power that's doing that. I think that's those 2 slow corners, turn 13 and turn 14. I think that's where they were gaining the time, and I think that's where Alpine was so strong, is the slow corners. That's why Ocon, for example, qualified in 6th place, because the Alpine in the slower corners was very, very strong. And then, in the middle sector, say after Mercedes and Red Bull, you'd have to say probably Ferrari are 3rd quickest. I mean, I know Lando Norris is ahead of both Ferraris, but because Daniel Ricciardo's not up there, I don't think we can categorically say that, McLaren are clearly ahead. Because Norris, I think, kind of like Verstappen today, was doing a bit more than the car was capable of, which he has done plenty of times this season. Ferrari, and then McLaren, and then after that, you've got, George Russell looking very quick there in the middle sector. Also, Alfa Romeo in that middle sector looking pretty good as well, compared to, say, Aston Martin looking pretty good, I would say. Because remember, Alfa Romeo, qualifying-wise, their car doesn't tend to be that strong. In the race, it's a lot stronger. So I think tomorrow you will see a lot stronger of a performance from Alfa Romeo. But in terms of the fight for victory, definitely Mercedes clearly, in terms of the aerodynamic side, clearly ahead of Red Bull this weekend, without doubt. And if Verstappen's going to win, it's going to be either a start line overtake, and then him keeping very close and within a second of the car ahead so he can get, that very powerful DRS. Or it's going to be really luck. I don't see Red Bull, if, say, Max Verstappen and Perez are in 3rd and 4th place, and it's Hamilton first, Bottas second, or even Bottas first, Hamilton second, because of the pace of the Mercedes in the middle sector, I don't see Red Bull keeping up. I just don't. So, really, they've got to strike as early as possible in the race tomorrow if they want that great race result. But let me just quickly go back to this picture. I'm just going to quickly come to you guys in the chat and ask, for the race tomorrow, what do you think about, Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari? What do you think they're going to be getting up to tomorrow? And who do you think, after qualifying, of course, is finished, who do you think is the favourite to win? And who are you picking to win the race? Let me know in the chat. And as well, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. UK time, I will be live for the race watch along for the Portuguese Grand Prix of 2021. And of course, Nib will be there as well. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for that, and hit the notifications bell. You can subscribe on the bottom right of the screen if you like, or just go to my channel page if you'd rather do it there. As well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video everywhere you can. Right. Let's take a look at some comments here. Crystal Racing, well done to Vettel for getting through to Q3. We'll get into that in a moment. Great job by him. Ken Waller says that time from Hamilton in Q2 was ominous for Red Bull, and you could see on Horner's face he knows Mercs are quicker now. Well, again, in those sector times, you can clearly see in just half a minute, Mercedes are so strong compared to anything else out there. So, I'd say the chances of Max Verstappen winning tomorrow probably 30% at best, because of the speed of the Mercedes this weekend. It's not like Red Bull were miles quicker and Max bottled pole. It's not like that at all. It's more so, Max probably would have got pole today, but it would have been just about, and it would have been thanks to more so a great lap by him than the Red Bull car being genuinely quicker. So yeah, I think very tough racing for tomorrow for Max Verstappen and Red Bull, without doubt. We have, though, just got a donation from Tim Huter, I think it is, who donates 5. I don't know what currency that is, but thank you very much for donating it, mate. Says, I think Charles will be P5 because he starts on mediums and Max will win. Well, let me know, when it comes to Max winning, let me know how you think he will, because when I look at the race, if he doesn't make a position up on the start, I just don't see how he gets past. I just don't see it. I mean, maybe he'll get past, say, one of them loads of laps into the race, but I don't see him just marching up to the back, passing both of them and just easily winning the race. He doesn't have that speed. The Red Bull car doesn't have that speed. Sorry. If my throat will allow me. Eugene Kelly says, I think Max better worry about his teammate. This is what everybody wanted, a Max teammate who can challenge him legitimately. I will say as well, I thought Sergio Perez put in a very good drive during the session, because in Q1 and Q2 he was not that far off Verstappen, and even in Q3 not that far off, and we know what Perez is like on race day, so if Perez can just have a trouble-free start, I don't see why he can't be in there somehow. Maybe he'll, maybe Red Bull, if they're going to try and do something against Mercedes, maybe they split the strategy and Verstappen goes for an undercut and Perez goes on a massively long overcut. We'll see. We will see. Crystal Racing saying Swiss franc is that currency, right? So 5 Swiss francs from Tim Huter. Again, thank you very much for that. Right, let me read a couple more comments and we'll get onto the rest of the field. Also, just to let you guys know, I'm not going to be on for massively long tonight because I am very tired. I might as well just say the reason I'm massively tired. I mean, partly, or half of it is, this is my 3rd stream of the day, but secondly, I'm trying to wear in these new glasses, and I haven't worn prescription glasses for 5 years, something like that, 6 years. And, well, in the hour before this stream, I was very, very tired and very nervy, I guess you could say. So I'm not going to be on for massively long tonight, to be honest. Michael Arbin says Perez is doing very well. Since Bahrain, I mean, of course, the Imola race, Perez made mistakes and definitely fucked things up for himself, but in qualifying, at least, I can't fault Sergio Perez at all. Front row at Imola, could have got pole at Imola, and then here, P4, couple tenths off his teammate. That's, that's really no different to say what Daniel Ricciardo would have done, 3 years ago when he was his teammate. So, can't really fault him for his qualifying performances this season. And in Bahrain, he did try to get through on the medium tyre, and it was very close in the field, so I think that definitely played a role. Yeah, can't fault Perez at all, to be honest. Right, let me find one final comment, and then we'll get to the next few teams and how they got on and how they'll do. Mika says, the track offered no grip. I hate it when we were talking all about tyres instead of great laps. I do share your frustration a bit, but tyres do play a key role in every series in the performance of the cars, so you're going to get that. Again, when they bring the hardest compounds of tyre that they can possibly bring, plus the track temperature is not very high, this is what happens. I mean, I don't know what compounds they're bringing for the Spanish Grand Prix, but let's say they bring a step softer compound, the C4, C3, and C2 instead of the C3, C2, C1, and it's quite a bit hotter for the Spanish Grand Prix, then it probably won't, have an effect. The only thing we'll be talking about with tyres is tyre wear in the race, but in terms of qualifying, it probably won't play that big of a role. But again, when we have the conditions we have this weekend, it will play a massive role, I'm afraid. Anyway, let's get into the rest of the team. So, Aston Martin, with Sebastian Vettel at least, great day. First Q3 appearance of the season, his best qualifying of the season, and has improved his qualifying position every single Grand Prix so far. He did, I think, start last at the first Grand Prix, so surely he was going to get better than that. And he did, of course, at Imola, but still wasn't quite good enough. But this weekend, really, coming into qualifying, it looked as though he was going to be nowhere and probably where his teammate ended up, getting knocked down in 17th place. But that's not how it finished up. Great driving, clutch driving, I have to say. When he really needed to bang in the laps, he did. And I think he is now starting, not fully, still got some time to get there, but I think he is now starting to get to grips, no pun intended, with the Aston Martin. And I think, by Monaco, Baku, I could see him, being maybe not the old Sebastian Vettel, but performing at the level we expected him to this season. So great for him, and I don't see why he can't finish in the points. I mean, the Aston Martin in a straight line is very strong. The Aston Martin race pace is actually decent. It's not great, but it's decent. It will allow him to be in there. And the cars behind aren't exactly massively threatening, let's say, in terms of taking points away from him. So I think Vettel will be fine. I think he'll definitely be in the points. Not the points, in the top 10, is what I'm trying to say, at the end of the race. But he'll definitely be in that fight very strongly, without doubt. Lance Stroll in 17th. I mean, he doesn't go great around this track, but I definitely didn't expect that. He's not going to get points, is he? If it's going to be a points finish, it's going to be Sebastian Vettel. Stroll will do his usual great start and all, but I don't really see Stroll getting into the action too much. So if Aston Martin going to get a point, it's going to be Sebastian Vettel. And I have to say, Aston Martin are looking overall a tad better than they were a couple of weeks ago. Just a tad. It's nothing massive like Alpine or anything, but they are looking a tad better, which is good to see. AlphaTauri next, 9th and 14th for them. Because of the improvements of teams like Ferrari and now Alpine, AlphaTauri have really just slipped back into what they were last season, which is, Gasly just about getting in the top 10 and getting some decent grid positions, with their second driver struggling a bit to get, into a position where they can have strong finishes, which is what Daniel Kvyat had last season. And I have to say, this Grand Prix, I think, perfectly shows how critical those first two races were, where they had a very quick car and they just didn't get the points that they should have got at those races. So, 9th and 14th, it's okay. It's nothing special. I think Gasly will score points, but I mean, they're 5th in the Constructors, I think, AlphaTauri, but I really think those first two races, they should have been right up there in terms of scoring points with McLaren and Ferrari, and they've just blown it so massively. And I don't think AlphaTauri are going to be a team that is really, really good at the end of the season. And so far this season, they have had a knack to just not quite get the result that they should get. So, to be honest, I'm a bit disappointed in AlphaTauri today. And I think, 9th and 14th, not great. Not great, is it? For Alpine, though, 6th for Esteban Ocon. What a drive. I'd have to say driver of the day today. Up there, we'll say Bottas and Vettel. To get that car up there and, out-qualify Fernando Alonso by such a massive margin. Sorry. My throat is very sore. To out-qualify Alonso by such a massive margin in terms of lap time and position, with Alonso down in 13th. Esteban is really saving his F1 career here. I mean, Alonso's not quite there yet, I will say that, and I think that's definitely playing a factor towards Fernando Alonso's performance, but you got to give the man credit for today and last weekend as well, because he was clearly better than Alonso at Imola a couple of weeks ago, and this weekend, in the meaningful sessions, has been clearly ahead as well. So great job by Ocon, and it's going to be a tough race because I think, Norris behind, I think he's in a lot stronger of a package, I think, Norris, for the race than Ocon is with his Alpine, Leclerc as well, and probably Gasly. So he will still struggle to get a good finish, but no reason why he can't get a points finish. The only reason I can think of is that he gets a really bad start, because the Alpine is not exactly a car that's kind of like the Ferrari. It's not exactly a car that's just going to blast past people in a straight line. So if he gets a decent start, then should be able to nick a couple points. But very good drive. Alonso 13th. What can I say? I mean, the only thing I think that will help him is starting the race on whatever compound of tyre he wants to, which is most likely going to be the medium compound because of the tyre warm-up issue. I don't think he'll start on the soft, because the soft will, once they've warmed up, I think they'll go away so quickly compared to the medium that there's no point, starting on them. So, Alonso could probably get in there, but most likely I think Ocon is going to nick probably a couple points. But I don't think definitely he'll be up in 6th place in the race, because I think Norris, Leclerc, Gasly definitely have, again, stronger packages for the race than Ocon does have. Alfa Romeo, decent. I don't think you can call it good. I don't think you can call it very good or even better than that. Giovinazzi 12th. That's about where you would hope Alfa Romeo would qualify, considering the current pecking order in Formula 1. Kimi Räikkönen, I have to say, put in a very poor lap at the end of the session. 6/10 off Giovinazzi. And I know, Giovinazzi is a very quick driver in qualifying, but Räikkönen does have to really work on his qualifying a bit, because he's very quick in the race. Very quick. We've seen it in the first 2 races. He's much quicker than his teammate. He just doesn't have the speed on a Saturday to put the whole thing together to give him a great chance of a points finish. So he does need to work desperately on that, because with Tsunoda 14th, Alonso 13th, he probably could have at least nabbed 1 position up the order. Maybe 2 at most, but I'd say at least 1 he could have, nabbed that. So, very disappointed for Kimi Räikkönen. Giovinazzi, though, another great performance in qualifying. Let's hope Alfa Romeo finally get a points finish, because I think they really deserve one. They've got a very good race car. They just haven't had the luck, I think, so far this season. And finally, Williams, this man on screen, what a drive. I wouldn't give him driver of the day, because I think Ocon was exceptional today. But, yeah, P11, I mean, maybe we thought Williams would get into the second part of qualifying and maybe 14th, 15th, but nobody saw P11, and he was only half a tenth from getting into the top 10. And I think if he did get into the top 10, I think he would have knocked out Carlos Sainz in back into the drop zone to get into Q3, Russell. And Russell could have easily, if he banged in a couple of great laps in Q3, could have easily finished higher than 10th. So Russell, great driving. I still think, because of the race pace of the Williams, I still think he'll need some luck to get a point, but he's definitely driving at the absolute best he can. He was shaking his head with disappointment that he couldn't get into the top 10, which I think just shows his winning mentality, that he wants to, if he's, that close to getting a position, he wants it desperately, which I think is a good mentality to have. But yeah, I still think Williams will struggle to get a point because of the cars behind them, but they're in the fight, without doubt. They are in the fight. But guys, that is, I think, it for the stream. I'm just going to quickly read some more comments in the live chat, and then we'll get into, or go to the end of the stream. Bristol Racing says, Alpha are also very meh, completely bottled points at Imola. And also says, Kimi's qualifying speed is far gone. I know, it's such a shame, because his qualifying pace years ago used to be, not all the time, but most of the time, pretty good. He just doesn't have it anymore. I think he's a lot more... I think his career path... Maybe not career path, that's the wrong word. Maybe just the way his driving style or focus has evolved. He's become a bit like Niki Lauda did when Lauda got to, say, the end of his career. Because Lauda used to be immensely strong in qualifying, and in the race it'd be maybe not as good, but still great and incredibly hard to beat. But later in Lauda's career, and obviously the McLaren car at the time in 83, 84, 85 had quite a lot to play with it, but his qualifying wasn't quite what it was, and he wouldn't focus on it so much. He would be a lot more calm and focused on just getting the race setup right. And for him, as long as the race setup was right, even if he qualified far below where he should have been on the grid, he's still getting those positions. And of course, that's what massively helped him in for Lauda in 1984 to win the championship by half a point. I kind of feel that with Kimi Räikkönen, it's the same thing. He doesn't really focus on qualifying too much and doesn't really give it that big of a standing in his mind. And he's a lot more focused on, as long as the race car is set up well, then it doesn't really matter where he starts because he's confident enough in his own ability to have a good race result. But I think it's cost him plenty of times in the last few years, especially when he was at Ferrari. Because if he had the qualifying speed of his former self, then he probably would have still been there. Right. Let me have a quick look for some more. Crystal Racing also saying, Russell very quick or Latifi very slow. It's probably both, to be honest, and Latifi has been shockingly poor so far. Yeah, a bit of both, to be honest. Russell's always, I think, kind of like Verstappen, always getting the absolute maximum out of himself in the car that he can. Latifi, I think, he's a decent driver, Latifi, but I just think ultimately, and he probably won't be on the grid next season if I'm going to guess. I just think ultimately, Latifi just doesn't have the skills to be a decent or good Formula 1 driver. I just don't see it. Kind of like Brendan Hartley. Brendan Hartley was okay at best. He was obviously very talented and skilled because you have to be to get into Formula 1, but he didn't have anything stand out that meant that anyone wanted to keep him in Formula 1. Kind of the same with Latifi. Just doesn't have anything to him that's, stands out. I mean, say Giovinazzi, people may criticise him for his race performances, but at least in qualifying, he is very quick, and clearly that is a big benefit to any team that has him. So, I do think Latifi will be off the grid at the end of the season. Wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know who would replace him. Jack Aitken? Unless he's gone somewhere else, I don't know. But whoever's going to replace him, it's only going to be probably at least more of the same. And if it turns out to be an improvement, it's not going to be anything massive, is it? Plus, I also do rate Russell very highly. I think Russell is already, at this point of his career, up there in terms of speed with Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris. I think he's right there. And even I think if Russell was Hamilton's teammate, I don't think Russell would beat Hamilton over the course of a season. I definitely don't believe in that. But he'd definitely give Hamilton a very tough season as his teammate. So I think we also need to look at that when it comes to Latifi's performance, because I do, again, rate Russell very highly. Right, let me find one final one, then we'll come to the end. 2B, or I was going to say 2 by then. I think it's Toby, just with a space in between. Asks, what is your prediction for Stroll, Russell, and Ricciardo? Russell, I'll say 13th. I think he'll finish. Ricciardo, say 12th. And then Stroll, probably 15th or something like that. Because the Aston Martin car is not exactly as good as the car it was last season, of course, which was the Racing Point. So when you did have a poor qualifying last season, it's not like you had the car that was easily good enough to get straight back into the top 10 in, 20 laps. So I think Stroll is in for a very hard race. But guys, that is it for the stream. Thank you guys for coming along to all the streams today. The Practice 3 watch along, the Qualifying watch along, and this race preview. And again, I will be live tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. UK time, also known as half an hour before the race starts, for the race watch along for the Portuguese Grand Prix of 2021. Of course, Nib will be along with me, and yeah, hopefully you can join us for that. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, I'll go to my channel page and do it there. And again, hit the notifications bell. Don't forget to smash the like button as well. Share this video everywhere you can. Also, comment down below, if you're watching this after the stream's finished, who do you think will finish where? Just give me your predictions for tomorrow's Grand Prix and what you think's going to happen and how things will play out. Let me know in the comments. And also, Don't forget as well to join my Discord server, link below in the description. A great place for notifications for my videos and streams if you really want them. And also, we've got nearly 500 people on the server, so and it's very frequent for debate and F1 chat. So you do want that. My server is a great place for that. But guys, until tomorrow, and until the 2021 Portuguese Grand Prix from Portimao, it has been me, Jazzer HD. Goodbye.